Okay, and we are now recording. All right, well, good morning. It is Saturday, December the 4th, and I'm Nancy Moore, and this is a race meeting. And we have some housekeeping that we'd like to share. If you look at your screen, depending on your device, it's either at the top or it's at the bottom. But we have, there's a mute button, and we ask everyone to mute themselves unless you're speaking. We have a stop video, which looks like a little camera. You can use that to pause the screen in case there's something you want to do, you don't want everybody to see. There's a participants button that you can see who is in the meeting. There is also a chat button where you can put information in the chat for the rest of the group. And I think that's it for the housekeeping. We'll start off by saying, Erace, racism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating fellow human beings of all colors with love and respect. Join us. Okay, well, I did introduce myself, Nancy Moore, and I've been coming to Erace since June of 2007. So we'll start off with introducing ourselves, and we'll start with Bill.
I'm Bill Ives. I've been coming to Erace for about 4 or 5 years. Sorry.
Okay.
I wanted to mention that I put a link to a PBS documentary on Islam that Glenn provided to us. And we watched it twice. It's really worthwhile seeing. It's a little over 2 hours, and it's a very comprehensive documentary narrated by Ben Kingsley. So I highly recommend it. It's in the
chat. Thank you, Bill. Marion, unmute yourself.
Running this mouth and forget. Good morning again, everyone. I'm Marion Lagarde. I've been attending the race discussions since 1993. It's good to see everyone this morning. Glad to be here.
Okay, good. Thank you. Marva?
Good morning. Look forward to seeing you all every Saturday. Have a happy holiday season.
Thank you. Phyllis?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Phyllis. I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise, been a member for a couple of decades on and off. Plus, I was raised as a Muslim and was a practicing Muslim for quite a few years. So this subject is definitely very interesting to me.
Thank you, Louise. Michelle?
Good morning, everyone. I think everybody at this right now knows who I am, but I'm happy to be here. I look forward to the conversation. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Pedro?
Hey, good morning. Sorry I was late. I was reading the article in a delinquent manner. So I've been with these meetings, I guess, a little over a year, really enjoy them, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you. Cindy?
Sorry, I was late. I have a workman working on the upstairs bathroom so we can move back to our bedroom. So that was important. I'm Cindy Morse. 3 or 4 years, I guess, where I've been part of Erace, though I remember hearing about it when Rhoda, way back when it got started, a long time ago, but I never could get around to it. Sorry about that. I missed it. I'm excited about this discussion.
Thank you. Glenn?
Glenn Abdullah. Been coming since 1994. And I'm glad to be here this morning.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. And a few more housekeeping. You say everybody silence your phone, but now we ask everybody to mute yourself unless you're talking. Raise one finger to get on the list, wave it around. We speak in order of the list. We try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. We are respectful. We don't interrupt the speaker. We also can have a clarifying question where you raise 2 fingers, wave it around. And a clarifying question is, I didn't understand what you meant, or could you please further explain? 15 minutes before the end. The meeting will go to 11:30, but at 11:15, we will start our final wrap up where we make our final comments and we keep those to 1 minute. If you haven't already spoken, you can take a full 2 minutes, okay? Okay, the reason that I brought this topic, I brought it because I was at work surfing the internet, looking at the news articles, and I read an article about the exchange between Boebert and Ilhan Omar, and it was very disturbing. And the recent, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have been really the target of many conservative right-wing members of Congress, ever since they took office. And I think it's terrible. I think they're targeted because they are people of color. They're targeted because of their religion. They're targeted because they are women. And I think it's horrible. So I was looking for articles that motivated me to look for articles about Islamophobia. I don't think anyone should be targeted because of their religion. And like I said, they've got like 3 causes or 3 reasons that people are targeted, and they're young. They're not old Caucasian men. So they definitely stand out. So anyway, that's why I brought this topic. I know it's kind of a controversial subject, so I hope to get a lot of discussion and a lot of thought. So I see Greer is with us. Hi, Greer. So with that being said, I think I covered everything. The list is open. And everybody jump in at once. Phyllis.
Marva has her hand up. Marion has her hand up.
Marva and Marion. Okay.
So this morning I came across, and I didn't get to finish watching it, but a video on Instagram. Ilhan Omar and her husband were having a conversation about her book and her life. And it just kind of struck me that her life situation, having had to flee her home country of Somalia and being a refugee and coming here at a young age, like I think she was 12 when she got here, having to learn English, gives her a perspective that can, and in her case did, contribute to making her an empathic person, empathetic person, and that Lauren Boebert and her cohort Marjorie Taylor Greene have never experienced things that instilled that in them, and it's really sad to me. And I think the Boebert and Taylor Greene make me actually just embarrassed to be a white woman. Honestly, they just are the worst example, in my opinion, and that they're in our government and just walk around with the privilege and the ignorance that they do is just, it's repulsive to me. I'll probably get on the list again later. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Marva. Cindy.
I wanted to say, the Muslims has not been exposed during my formative years as a teenager, as a young adult. I only knew about the Muslims in the United States, and that was Muhammad Ali, Farrakhan, and I was exposed by my brother to the Muslim religion. And during my latter adult life, they have gotten more exposure on the national news. And I'm always interested in learning something new. And I can't thank the Muslims from exposing me to the national scene. And I'm interested in learning something new monthly, and I can appreciate that. And the women have not been exposed as I would like it, and the women are gaining more public notice lately. Thank you.
Thank you, Marva. Marion?
I find it, oh, I thought I had,
No, you are muted.
okay.
There you go.
I've always found that to be a sort of a form of hypocrisy on the part of these people. They're always jumping up and down, screaming and yelling about freedom and democracy. I am so glad that I had the opportunity when it presented itself, the two folks that attended our meetings in the past, Jenny and her husband, when they extended the invitation to visit the mosque, I attended those meetings at the mosque in Kenner, I think for 6 weeks in a row. 2 weeks I couldn't go for some reason, the time constraints. It was very enlightening. It wasn't anything weird or strange. When I told people at my church I was going, and I did go, there was some gasps. I said, well, I don't know why you're gasping and you're horror struck. I said, it wasn't anything terrible that went on, and I shared the experience, and I'm glad I did, and I do it again if the opportunity presents itself. So we just have to be more open-minded and look at each other as what we are. We are human beings, come in all shapes, sizes, colors, whatever it is you have it. And I think it's hypocritical for people to be declaring, oh, we welcome everyone. And the minute the word Muslim pops up, you think it was the devil coming from hell or something. And I just find it so offensive and disrespectful. And if I hear anybody, which I have heard people saying negative things about Muslims, I open my big mouth and I don't put my foot in it. And I said, before you malign people and criticize people, why don't you try to find out about people? It's abhorrent, it's disgusting, it's disrespectful. And as I said, any opportunity that presents itself and I hear people of any faith being maligned, I'm going to say something about it. And I will tell the persons, if you don't have anything good to say, if you haven't looked into it before you criticize it, why don't you go and look into it before you start criticizing and damning people to hell? Oh, those Muslims, they're all terrorists. No, they are not. Just keep your trap shut if you don't have anything positive to say. Go ahead and find out for yourself.
All right, thank you. Marion, next we have Greer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sorry I'm running late. I think the word phobia has changed meanings since it was first invented, especially now because we put phobic behind so many things like transphobic, homophobic. I'm gonna say this, by definition, this is what I looked up. A phobia is a persistent, excessive fear, unrealistic fear of an object, person, animal, activity, or situation. It's a type of anxiety disorder. A person with a phobia either tries to avoid that which triggers the fear or endures it with great anxiety. This ain't phobia, this is hate. And that's what it needs to be called, hate. Again, we attach phobia and phobic to words. And the definition has morphed. So why isn't racism toward Black people called a phobia? Because in actuality, it's not, because it was an agenda created in order to have commerce happen. And it was sanctioned by law and governments, and it's still being sanctioned today. We need to stop calling things other things and allowing people to put words into our mouths. Call it what it is, call it hate. That's it.
Thank you, Maria. We have Cindy and Glenn. You have your hand raised. Okay, Cindy. Unmute.
Yeah, I just remembered.
Okay.
I've lived a very sheltered life. And part of it is that as a kid growing up, small southern town, my dad was a minister and he worked with Black churches toward sort of ecumenical work together. We were welcomed and they were welcomed in my daddy's churches. But that gave me a view that people are more accepting than I think they really are, which is kind of sad. I wish the world were getting more accepting, but I don't think it is. So much coming up now is based on prejudices and hatreds that started before I was born. I think this organization, one of the goals, at least for me, is to work toward more understanding across the groups, whether it's race or religion or whatever. It's a sad time in our country. But again, I think that's partly built into the American spirit, which is very depressing. How do we work against it? How do we enlighten people except by our own interaction? I love input. Depressing enough.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, we have Glenn and then the list is open.
Well,
Glenn?
Well, I think that Beaufort and this other woman, you know, that is purely out of hate that they're doing this, but they're doing it because it gets them elected. It also gets them fundraising, and there are people who are in the Republican Party who are just like them, who have absolutely no shame, no character at all, no conscience. Don't care who they endanger over what they say or do. Don't care nothing about it. They only care about being elected and receiving money. Somebody said something on Fox the other day called Fauci a Nazi doctor named Joseph Mengele, who did all kinds of experiments on people, horrible experiments. So she equated him with the COVID as being a Nazi doctor. And she does that to make money. That's all that said.
Thank you, Glenn. The list is open. Bill and Greer. Bill? Unmute.
Yeah, there we go. I want to second what Glenn said. A lot of these haters are just grifters, emboldened by the grifter in chief, our former president. And a lot of them are just using this for fundraising. And this hatred, it's very sad because this hatred and stupidity has contributed, the people who espouse these views have contributed millions and millions of dollars to the hate campaigns of the Republicans. And we've gotten in this cycle where the more these people hate, the more money they rake in. So there's a big incentive for them to do it. But it's all based on stupidity. As we all know, Islam is a monotheistic religion that was, some of its roots go back to ancient Israel. And it's the same roots that go back to Christianity. And so Islam, Christianity, and Judaism all share common roots. And we should recognize that, and people don't. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Greer?
All right. I'm coming from my own personal dealings with a phobia. I actually sought help for it. And my thing is, when you're scared of something or it causes you anxiety, you never run towards it. You never. I avoided this until I couldn't. It affected my life. So with this, the term phobia, it just blows my mind. But when we look at, again, the founding of this country, even today, they've never attached phobia to the hatred of American Indians or Native Americans. They've never put phobia attached to us. And that's very disturbing. Because if you're gonna call it, if you're gonna call hatred of people a phobia, then everybody you hate should fall under that category. And it really is not a phobia. Because like I said, it was a set agenda against both of these people in the founding of this country and monetary base. And also, like all these people who were on Joe Biden, not that I'm a Biden fan, but I noticed when Afghanistan fell, everybody's like, oh yeah, he left those people. Even Republicans were saying this. He didn't plan for it well. Oh, so they had compassion for the people because they could use it against Joe Biden, not because they actually had compassion for the people who are caught up in all of this. People are always trying to play things to their advantage all the time. That's it.
Thank you. Pedro?
Yeah, I mean, I listening to the comments and reviewing the article, the Islamophobia, the phobia is created
Phyllis?
by the portrayal of Islam, the false portrayal of Islam by politicians in our, in our culture or whatever. And it just occurs to me, it's kind of like a shiny coin deal. I've studied for a long time our foreign policy throughout the world, and particularly in the Middle East, and such, which really precipitated and created these and enabled these very terrorists that we claim, and then we transfer the terrorism to a religion in a completely ignorant manner, but we're acculturated kind of into this ignorance. It's kind of like a shiny coin in which we are deflected from the real issue, I believe, of holding our own foreign policy and government accountable for the atrocities it exudes in these other parts of the world. And then when they respond, and there's no justification for terrorism, but there are causes of it. There are things that kindle it. And these policies that never get really vetted are never discussed. Instead, we go back and forth with political righteousness about how bad the Republicans are, but the Democrats are completely in bed with all of these atrocious foreign policies that create such an unstable world. So I just wanted to kind of say that.
Thank you, Pedro. We have Phyllis and then Glenn. And Louise. Excuse me.
So, as someone who attempted to practice Islam for a couple years, I have a lot of strong feelings about this because I have and still do hang out with a lot of Muslims, mainly hijabi women and some non-hijabi women. And any stereotype you have, you should just throw it out the window because you would be surprised. And I will not share stories. But I will also say I was greatly lucky to be able to attend a fundraiser that Rashida Tlaib held here, actually out in Kenner, and got to talk to her. And she is the real deal, really great person, and grounded in taking care of the people that elected her. And it's interesting to me, like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are so different, and nobody talks about the diversity between the two of them. You know, Ilhan wears hijab, Rashida mainly does not. Rashida's Palestinian and kind of pale. Ilhan is darker skinned and from Africa, and there's diversity in them, just the two of them. And there's lots of diversity in the Muslim community in this country and around the world. And it really, it pains me that this is ongoing, this kind of like using the demonization of a religion and a people to get political points or fundraising or votes. It's disgusting. And I think in terms of the squad in general, they're mostly women with some exceptions now. And I think that plays into it. They're young, for the most part, younger than the old white guys. I heard that, I'll finish. And I think there's a lot of sexism involved in the attacks on them. And even by other women. So we should call that out. And I probably have more to say later.
Okay, thank you. We have Glenn, Louise, and then Bill. Glenn?
Yes. You know, when 9/11 happened, when those planes struck those buildings in New York, the majority of the Muslim world were in grief with America on that. Also, you know, now some of the radicals that we have that are not practicing Islam, some of the violence that they do, the innocence, that doesn't come from the religion. The prophet, he had to fight to survive when they were trying to stomp out the religion. But he told his people, you don't attack the civilians. You don't fight the civilians. You just only fight with those who are fighting against you. You don't destroy their trees. You don't cut down their trees. You don't destroy their property. He had, he was not a person that did war crimes. But now the real threat is not coming from Muslims. The real threat now is coming from the Christian people. All these militia groups, these are Christian people, come out of Christian homes. The ones who attacked the Capitol, they were Christians. And these malicious groups, all these Klansmen and all these people, they are the greatest threat. They're the greatest jihadists that we have to fear today. The police fear them, and also the government fear them. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Glenn. Louise?
So you say the Christians are the biggest threat, but again, it's like the Muslims are not terrorists. The Christians, these people are not Christians. If you look at the essence of the religion, you know, they have no right to call themselves Christians. That's not, and I think Pedro nailed it by saying that they transfer the terrorists to the Muslim religion, which is extremely wrong, obviously, because the terrorists are not Muslims. They're not Muslims. They're not practicing true Islam, which actually means peace. So yeah, it's a complete opposite. So they are not Muslims. And just as the KKK and all these, and especially that Boba, what's her name? That horrible, all of these horrible politicians that spout hate, they're not Christians, you know? And just a personal note, I think I've told you this before, but when 9/11 happened, my brother called me from England and he was freaked out and he was like, don't tell anyone you're a Muslim, which there was no fear of that because I'm actually not a practicing Muslim. Plus I don't wear the hijab.
Yeah.
No one would know. So there was no fear of that, but they were very freaked out and worried. The name, you know, of someone who is a practicing Muslim is so tainted by what these horrible are doing, have done, and are still doing. I'm sure there's more, but that's it for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Okay, we have Bill, Phyllis, Greer, and Pedro. Anyone else? Glenn. All right, Bill.
I saw an article recently that talked about how Europeans taught for centuries that Africa had no written language or history or philosophy. They discounted Egypt as not part of Africa, and they made those statements. But there was recently discovered in Mali over 1 million manuscripts with all the fields of human knowledge, law, science, medicine, and this did not make the mainstream news. And it's ironic that Islamic scholars saved, not only did they produce great scholarship on their own, but they preserved the Greek manuscripts when the Europeans were burning everything around. And they preserved Greek and Roman thought in their libraries to share it with the rest of the world. And so there's a big, solid history of scholarship in Islamic African countries. And that's not fully recognized, to no surprise. So we owe a lot to Islamic scholars, and we should recognize that more. That's it.
Thank you, Bill. Next we have Phyllis.
So I wanted to continue just what I was saying about the squad. I think a big part of the reason the right attacks them, besides them being female, is that in general, they are anti-Zionist and they do not support the occupation of Palestine by Israel. And that is a big no-no in American politics, although it is a human rights position that is completely justified. to be anti-Zionist. Note, I am not saying anti-Israeli or anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist, which is a very specific thing. I also, when people use terms like American Taliban and Al-Qaeda and things like that, I object to that. I object to using words from another religion when Christianity has the Crusades, which we still glorify. In some cases, there are churches that there's a school here. I think it's Louis, King of France, yada, yada, that they're the Crusaders. I've known of churches that their newsletter is called the Crusader. If Christians really understand what the Crusades did to other people, hopefully they would reject that as some sort of language to uphold. It should be, if you call a Christian a Crusader, it should be an insult. So I think, we have our own words that we can use to describe these people. We can certainly call them terrorists. We can call them right-wing nationalists. We can call them white supremacist terrorists, because terrorists to me doesn't necessarily involve one particular race or religion. But I don't ever use traditionally Islamic words to describe Christians who do things. Thanks.
All right, thank you, fellas. Greer.
During World War II, we all know that Japanese were put into internment camps, but people who are of German descent weren't. Because if the threat is ever perceived to be white, it's not really a threat. The Capitol riots, they knew that was going to happen because it was, again, white people. It wasn't a problem. They didn't feel they needed barricades. They didn't feel they needed extra police protection. They felt they didn't need anything, and we saw what happened. And even more so, it goes on to show what would just happen in Michigan. The teachers saw something was going on with this child. They let people who were officials in the schools who had the authority to remove him from the school. But no, they send him back to class. Because he was white, he wasn't perceived a threat. Anybody who isn't white is basically perceived a threat on some level. And that's dangerous to everyone. And I remember when 9/11 happened, and everybody was like, oh yeah, we got to get together, and we're together. I saw Black people and white people holding hands and waving. I'm like, and I'm sitting there thinking, I hate to say it, but I was saying, hell, I got to worry about y'all here. I don't have to worry about Muslims. But when you want me to have your common enemy, then we can be together. But other than that, I'm not sometime. That's it.
Thank you, Greer. Next, we have Pedro and then Glenn. Anyone else want to get on the list? Okay, Pedro.
Yeah, so I wanted to go back to what Bill was saying earlier about the common threads of religion. I'm not a really religious person, but I have, and I do appreciate kind of the revolutionary potential of those principles, which clearly is part of the Islamic faith. It is the Islamic faith, at least my understanding of it, from among other things, reading about Malcolm X's experience in visiting the Hajj and seeing people from all different colors, all with the same religion, and how it broke through his very, very, kind of racist perspective on whites and helped him evolve into a higher level of understanding on that issue. So that was one thing I just wanted to mention. And I think to me, I can't understand why the primary emphasis of news and of discussions is not on wealth inequality, but instead that's never mentioned. And I think all these things we're talking about, it helps to keep us away from the real issues in life that not just threaten, but strangle democracy and need to be corrected if, if we're going to turn in the right direction for the majority populations of the world. Thanks.
Thank you. Glenn.
Yeah, I'd like to clear up something I said before. It's not my, was my intention that when I say about the threat is coming from the Christians, those Christians who, to put a blanket over everyone. But if you would ask all those people what were their religion, most of them is not going to say I don't have a religion. They'll tell you their religion is Christianity. And but is there? But they don't have a thorough or a good understanding of what they're supposed to believe in. And they got Christmas, they all feel good around Christmas. They feel like they want to be joyful and to be kind to their fellow man. They feel charitable during Christmas. But as far as the real understanding that enriches somebody's soul, they don't have it. Now, as we were speaking about diversity, I've been to the Hajj, and I was among all that diversity. And but I used to have in New Orleans, we used to have a Muslim that would come. He came from Turkey. He lived in America and he worked in America. And he would come to our place of worship on Friday. But he had blonde hair and blue eyes. And but you felt very comfortable around. He was a white man, but you just felt very comfortable around because he didn't have that racist attitude. He didn't have that attitude that I wasn't his brother. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Glenn. The list is open.
Well, I could have finished. You could have kept that clock.
Yeah. Continue. Continue.
Glenn, why don't you finish? Go ahead.
Yeah. So he didn't have that. You didn't see, you didn't have any uncomfortability of being around him because he didn't have the sentiments, because in Islam there's we are taught there's just one brotherhood, and humanity is one, and it's diversity in humanity, but we still are yet one, and so that makes a big difference in being harmonious with all the different races. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis, and then Beatrice.
Well, I just want to say it's important to always be aware that I think there's no religion that cannot be the beliefs of it and the initial beliefs of the original creators of it. There's no religion that cannot be misused or turned to something that was never intended in the beginning. The Taliban don't think they're not practicing Islam. They think they are, because it's their interpretation. And I'm not justifying it, because I think they're wrong. The same way I think a white supremacist is wrong. The same way I think the what do you call it? The prosperity gospel people, they're dead wrong. They're missing the whole point. And I think there's a whole strain of Christians these days that they are missing the whole point. And I was talking to somebody yesterday and about her particular religion, and just how when a religion has to assimilate to a larger culture, it skews it and makes it so that, like, it's almost like the original group of people who were on the outside of a larger group of like being on the outside of the United States accepted behavior. When they assimilate to it, the original community mindedness that they may have had goes away. And I think it's true of the early Christians. I think when they were sort of facing persecution, they were sharing everything in common. The same is true for her smaller religion. That they lose something by that assimilation, and then get sucked into the bigger culture. So like in America, the culture of colonialism, the culture of capitalism has done in Christianity, my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Phyllis. We have Beatrice and Louise.
Hi. But first of all, forgive my lateness, and I don't know what ever else has been said. And also, I'm making pralines, so I'm gonna be off the screen. But I think that fear and ignorance are so often at the bottom of our othering of people, and it just it's so unfortunate because there's so much that we can learn. And there's one dictum that is true for across religions, and it's like what we would call the golden rule, but it says, do not do to others what you would not want done to yourself. And that I've seen young children in an international school do a model of all the different religions where this is a basic thought, a different idea. And that is a beautiful unifying idea. And then finally, before I go back to my pot, this is a wonder. These books, The Idiot's Guide. My husband and I read The Idiot's Guide to Islam, The Idiot's Guide to Catholicism. And we just have to learn more about each other and not fear each other, not fear the difference. Finally, my brother, who is a little grounded than I, but basically his nose is aquiline and his hair is straighter. And I told him, I said, baby, if you wear anything on your head, let it be a cowboy hat, because I don't want anybody to confuse you, and you know what I'm saying, to make an other of you, just because of presuming how you look or what you may, who you may worship. Life is too short. The world is too connected for us to divide ourselves on these kinds of issues. And it's just tragic because there's so much that we could work on together. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Beatrice. Next we had Louise.
So in Phyllis had said something about culture, which religion obviously does pull in culture, very much so in Islam. When I was a practicing Muslim, I was in London, which is a very diverse city, as you know, and I went to many different mosques. And if they were run by Pakistanis, of course, the Pakistani culture was very much there, which is pretty male oriented. And then, there's the Middle East, the very different mosques, very different feel to it. But there also was the brotherhood and sisterhood, Glenn, a great feeling of togetherness, and doesn't matter what you look like, where you're from. And that was a lovely feeling. I mean, I did enjoy my time and it taught me a lot. But then I had to step away because of, I thought it was too, there's no female imams, the women have to pray behind the men, various things like that just didn't kind of sit right with me. But it was very beautiful and I met some very lovely people. And of course, my father and lots of my family, my brother married a Pakistani lady. So I've got a big extended family, an Afghani, my other sister married an Afghani guy. I mean, there's, there's very mixture and a big diversity, and I've learned a lot. And but I just decided not to be any religion. But as Beatrice said, yeah, we just need to learn. It's ignorance. it's definitely ignorance. And I think that's where hate comes from. Hate comes from the fear and ignorance. So yeah, we just need to learn, you know.
Thank you, Louise. Glenn? Okay.
When the Muslims pray, there's a reason the woman is behind the men. There's a very good reason why they're behind them. Now, I'm an old man now, but if I see a woman bending down in front of me, that's going to cause some kind of action, you know. So we put the women, we don't have the women bowing down in front of us, tooting up their behind in front of us. They put them behind us. And also, you know, I've been to, you know, always any mosque I go to, I can go to the Indians, I can go to the Arab. Nobody's going to say, well, what is he doing in here? You know, I went in when I was in Mecca. I went to neighborhoods when the call to prayer was given. I stopped in these neighborhoods and said prayer, and nobody turned their heads around it. You know, it was you know. But now, if I go in some churches today, that in some rural areas, I bet they'd be wondering what I'm doing in there. You know, so that's the difference. What I found in the two religions. You know, there's no. When I was born, they had St. Joseph Church and they had St. Catherine Church.
Michelle.
A block apart, and I couldn't go to St. Joseph Church. We weren't allowed to go in there. You know, they didn't want that church integrated. You say something?
No, Phyllis had her fingers up to ask you a clarifying question.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you think that women have no reaction or response to seeing men's behinds tooted up in the air?
They shouldn't.
Sorry to break it to you.
Dirty mind.
Oh, dirty mind. What about your dirty mind? Let me be quiet. Let me be quiet. Okay.
Louise has a question.
Louise has a clarifying question as well.
So you said that women shouldn't, or why? What do you mean, why shouldn't they, Glenn? You said they shouldn't. Why shouldn't they?
Glenn?
Glenn?
Unmute yourself.
We have women on a different standard. A man can be sitting in front of an audience and open his legs. We don't want a woman open her legs in an audience. It's just
that's not what I asked.
Standard.
That isn't. Oh,
that's not what I asked.
What did you ask?
Glenn, Phyllis said women stare at men's butts as well in that kind of a way, and you said they shouldn't, and I said why?
Well, I don't have an answer for that because I'm not a woman, you know. But I do know that. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna leave that one go. I'll answer that another day. I had to think on that.
Okay. Moving on, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm just going to start by saying I'm going to have to hop off after this. So I've got to be on another call in a little while and I need to get some other stuff done. But anyway, my general just observation comment to the whole group on here is ever since I was old enough to kind of understand my own perspective on religion, I'm not religious, and I'm an atheist, I will admit that, is that, you know, religion provides society with another echo chamber to crawl into every week, or how often people meet up to go to their religious organizations. And so I've always found that conundrum for our society, because it's another way we can separate ourselves and go to our own sounding boards of people that basically, for the most part, think the same way, or do things the same way. And so it just has always given me pause. I completely understand the aspect of religion of wanting to provide people with a group, a social group to go to participate in a weekly basis, and that's something I've always felt like I've missed out on. Not being religious, so I completely understand that side of it, but I also see that it's, it just is another way we divide as a society. And so I that's one of the things that I've had a hard time wrapping my head around as somebody who's not religious, is justifying it for those purposes. So that's all I'm going to say. But thanks everybody. I hope everybody has a good week.
Thank you. You too, Michelle. Bye. Okay, we have Phyllis and then Greer.
Well, for those who don't know or need to be reminded, the term hijab does not just apply to a scarf or a veil that a woman wears. It applies to men's modesty as well. And part of men's modesty involves averting the eyes. So theoretically, a man in the mosque who's there to pray to God should have his eyes averted and not be looking at women's behinds, and hopefully have enough self-respect and self-control to not have an action, whatever that means, be enacted. Although I think I know what it means. In Islam, modesty does not just apply to women, and it doesn't just apply to what you wear, it applies to how you behave. And there are mosques where people, the genders pray intermixed. There's mosques where they pray side by side. There's unfortunately mosques where women go in through the back door and have a very poor room or area to pray in that is completely less comfortable than where the men pray. So that's just true. And again, I am not criticizing Islam over any other religion because I got problems with most of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Greer?
Well, religion is actually supposed to be actually in its purest form about good. It's only when man decides to twist things to suit a personal need or benefit that you notice things go off. Because if you look at just history in general, some of the greatest atrocities that have happened were based on religion and were allowed to happen because of religion. As long as man can twist or mutate something for personal gain, that's how it's going to be. Thank you.
Oh, that was quick, short, and sweet. The list is it's 11:01, and the list is open. Bill? Unmute. And Glenn.
Going back to the article that Nancy provided, it concludes that education, ignorance is the foundation of phobia, and that education is the antidote to that. Unfortunately, many people are not open to education, unlike the members of this group. And the concluding paragraph, it's important, quote, important that we understand that invisibility is what is giving Islamophobia its power. It's important that we understand that, because we need to know that Muslims are not outsiders, they're not strangers. And Muslims are visible to non-Muslims through their institutions, through their names, headscarves, etc. They know that their co-workers, their neighbors is Muslim. This helps to overcome whatever prejudice and concern that you might have. And so we need to have more education about Muslims. I highly recommend the video that I posted in the chat that we got from Glenn. And it's a great introduction to Islam from a historical perspective. And it puts a lot of things in context. So we need to just educate ourselves.
All right, thank you, Bill. We have Glenn and then Beatrice.
Well, the tactic of the Republicans is to keep ginning up people's emotions.
Marion.
And this is something that, that it's not the first time it's happened in American politics. It happened, during the time of George Wallace, Lester Maddox, Elanda Perez, all of these guys used to gin up the public to get elected. George Wallace, one time, he was a Democrat. He was a, what was he? I think he was a Democrat, but he was a moderate at one time. But every time he ran, he couldn't get elected. So he started talking that talk that would get him elected. I'm against blacks. I'm gonna keep them in their place and this and that. I'm gonna stand in the doorway of them coming to our university. All these things that he knew was a sure thing to get him elected. So this is not the first time, but all those people lost in the end. All those people went down in the end. And these people that thinking that the American people are going to give up their freedom and turn it over to these crazy people. Trump has never been elected by the majority of the people. When he won, he was not elected by the majority of the people. Majority of the people in this country do not like the man. And anything got his name on it, nobody wants to go to those hotels anymore. He's losing money on the hotel. He's losing money on this golf course. What, time passed already?
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
Okay, thank you. We have Beatrice, Marion, and then Phyllis. And then we'll see where we're at then. Okay, Beatrice.
I'm a member of an organization called the Interfaith Children's Movement here in Atlanta. And it is a wonderful opportunity to interact with people of all religions and to get to know people. I've been to masjid and I've been to events at the end of Ramadan, and it enriches my life to know more and to interact with people. I think representation is so important. I am always delighted when I see Hari Srinivasan, his name, and hear people whose last names are not Smith and Jones. I think that the country we need to open our hearts and our minds to the fact that to be an American is to be all of this, with the hijab, whatever. And I'm glad that we have elected officials who are of the Muslim faith, it is important that we keep our eyes and our hearts and our minds open. And so I'm just the point that representation is important, and interacting with people of different faiths and groups enriches all of us.
Okay, I got Pedro.
I am a Roman Catholic. But there's much about the Roman Catholic Church about which I disagree, because in my mind is formed, I can think about things and the effect that they have on people. So I think that within religions, there may be issues, there may be dictums with which we do not agree. And we need to be strong in saying that. But I'm just, again, and I know I'm repeating myself, representation, education, try not to be fearful, and to know that love is the grounding and uniting faith of all of us. If we can just get that message, it would mean so much.
Thank you, Beatrice. Pedro has a clarifying question.
Yeah, Beatrice, you mentioned earlier that there was a book that you and your husband had read.
Oh, yeah, darling. It's just, they have these, so I'm holding, I never know when stuff shows, but this series of books about idiots guide to all kinds of stuff. So we got Idiot's Guide to Buddhism, and I'm holding it crooked. I don't know if you see what I'm talking about? And so this book, Idiot's Guide to Understanding Islam. And we did the one about Catholicism, the one about Buddhism. You see what I'm talking about, baby?
I do. Thank you.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Time is 11:09. All right, we got Marion, Phyllis, and then Glenn, and then that's it. Marion.
Okay, very quickly, I'd like to say, at my church, we have a literacy department, and it encompasses reading, English as a second language, ESL, and Spanish. So I'm a participant in all three. With the ESL department, we've had people to come to the church from many different countries, and we help them learn English. Currently, even though we're using Zoom, I've worked with a lady and her friend and her sister-in-law from Iran. And we've developed a friendship. I am so glad that we have that ESL component because people feel comfortable enough coming to the church from other religions and other countries. And as I said, we've developed a bond. We go out to lunch together. We've gone to the park together. And the ministry leader joins us sometime. And it's really been a worthwhile experience. And she has expressed that she really appreciates how open and welcoming we have been. She wears her hijab wherever we go. And we get looked at, but people smile, and some people have a kind of a glazed over look, but it doesn't matter. It's just ladies out and about. So I'm glad that we have that representation. It is very enlightening, and it really broadens your horizons when you can come in contact, have a relationship with other people. And I think in the article that Nancy shared with us, it mentions that the reason why people don't understand Muslims is because they don't have any association with them. So we have that association, thank goodness.
All right, thank you, Marion. We have Phyllis and then Glenn.
A couple things I want to add. In the article, there's this man mentioned, Hatem Basian, and I heard him speak when I was in Berkeley. He did come before the pandemic. He did come to New Orleans, but I wasn't able to go to any of the meetings with him. But he started in Berkeley, Zaytuna College, which took over the property that used to be the Lutheran Seminary and the Graduate Theological Union, which is, I went to one of those schools for my MDiv. So I think that's deliciously ironic. And it's up in the hills, beautiful property. I wanted to say, when Imam Omar Suleiman gave a prayer at either the Senate or the House of Representatives, there was a lot of pushback about that, including my own sister didn't think that a Muslim should be giving a prayer in our government, but I doubt that she listened to his prayer. It was beautiful. It was ecumenical, interfaith, in English. Not that it would be bad if it was in Arabic. He's Palestinian American who used to be the imam at the Kenner Mosque. Sadly, this area lost him because he's kind of a big deal, and I think he could have transformed the Muslim community here in a good way. If you're worried about going to a mosque, don't, or going to any Muslim event, you will eat some good food. If that doesn't get you there, nothing will. I'll save the rest for my wrap up. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, then lastly, we have Glenn.
Well, we listening to these big mouth people who are just saying all these ugly things, but there's a lot of good going on. And it's been going on for a long time. I'm always attending a interfaith meetings. Sometimes the Christians and the Jews will come to my place of worship, and we go to their places of worship. And this has been going on for decades. And and all over the United States. And you remember, when I think in this New Orleans, when the Jewish community was attacked, the Muslims went there, for a prayer vigil with them. And so it's a lot of understanding that is being made. Just like Bill talking about the documentary, the American people are being educated. So they do know a lot about Islam, and also Jimmy Carter would have the Muslims over for iftar, the breaking of the fast. He would so did Bill Clinton and all the other presidents behind that would have Muslims over celebrating Ramadan. So it's not that positive. And the first person that opened up with prayer in Congress was Imam Waradi Muhammad, and that was might have been in the late 70s. So yes, things are not as bad as it look. So I'll just leave that as my last statement. In with the roundup too.
Okay. We're going to move to the wrap up. So Louise, you can make your comment during the wrap up. Okay. So let's see who has not. I think everybody has had a chance to speak. Interesting. Okay, Bill, we will start with you. Unmute.
Yes, it was a great article and discussion. We see that white America tends to demonize people of color, and they seem to demonize all people of color, including Muslims, who, for the most part, are people of color. There are certainly Muslims that aren't. But it's sad that this white supremacy is rampant, and it's just another example of it. And I don't know of any other race that has that same attitude towards others. So anyway, we need to keep educating people. Thanks for the article, Nancy.
You're welcome. Marion. Unmute.
All right. Very, very good article. I thoroughly enjoyed participating in the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Marva?
Thank you for the article. Thank you for the discussion. I'm considered myself an open-minded person and value my thought process and open to receiving information of all races. Thank you.
Thank you. Phyllis?
I just want to say, last night when I went out to this comedy show, the person I went with is a member of the LDS Church, the Mormons, who I met at a mosque. So she's kind of liberal in her religion. She was there for a class like I was, and we hit it off. And if there's one thing my life has taught me is do not hold stereotypes, because they will be broken down, and you should be open and excited when they are. Also, I wanted to say, shoot, there was something else, and then, well, this. Smash the patriarchy wherever you find it.
Thank you, Phyllis. Pedro?
Yeah, so just a couple quick thoughts. Thanks for the discussion today. One of Malcolm's interesting comments about religion is he said something to the effect that there's only one God, but he or she has many names. Christians call him Jesus, Muslims call him Allah. And I think it goes to Beatrice's comment about, the love being the foundation of religion, of really truly revolutionary religion, which I embrace. And then secondly, I think the race is a social construct. We talk about that, but we don't really embrace it. And I think what Glenn said kind of proves that up. And Malcolm said the same thing, that when he was at the Hajj, people with blue eyes and blonde hair, and there was they just looked at color and of the skin indifferently, right? Without any merit, which is much different than here in this country generally. And that's an acculturated trait, not a natural trait. Thanks.
Thank you, Pedro. Cindy? Unmute. Unmute. There you go.
Everybody's kind of covered it. It appears that we pretty much agree, which is to be expected with this group. I think we understand that because of the color of our skin, it doesn't make us different people. We need to get rid of the idea that one is better than the others. It's a slow process. I taught in schools for 40 years where with the littlest people, they're pretty accepting. I have not found more than 2 or 3 in 40 years of teaching that came into starting school with prejudice based on race. And usually if that happened, you could see it in the parents. So it's a question of comfort, contact. If you're never around someone who is Muslim, you're not going to understand, but you can be open to it. And that's the crucial thing. I think being unaccepting or unwilling to try to understand is based on fear that our own beliefs are not strong enough or not right. So hopefully we can accept our own beliefs and develop them, but also be willing to accept all the others. People have a right to different beliefs. So we head that way. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, Louise?
Okay, so I want to invite you all to go look at my brother's farm. He has an organic halal farm in obviously not go in person, but it's in Oxfordshire in England. And I put the link, it's Willowbrook Organic. He raises everything in the halal way. They've got all kinds of lessons and workshops that they have. It's very interesting. And Pedro, I could see you talking to my brother Lutfi till dawn about stuff. I could just see you two going, having a really good conversation. He's a very interesting guy. And of course, they're practicing Muslims and him and his beautiful family. So I do invite you to go look at that. I also want to say one thing which was lovely about prayer in praying 5 times a day. All of the movements are kind of yoga movements, like the child pose and forward bend and stuff. So Islam does incorporates a lot of health benefits. Fasting is very good for you. And then lastly, I just want to say that if you do see a lady in a hijab in the store or anywhere around, just to say Salaam Alaikum would mean the world to them. It's something that I do all the time. Every time I see a lady, of course, first they're like, what the, but just do that and it will definitely make their day and feel more welcome in this country, which they should be because they are part of this country. So yeah, great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Beatrice? She must be
I was-
mixing. Oh, there you go.
I was just dishing out the pralines, baby.
Okay.
Thank you for the wonderful discussion, the great article, and by whatever name we call the creator, Jehovah, Jesus, God, Allah, we are all the children of that creator. And it is our responsibility to love and care for and serve one another. Thank you for a good discussion. I'll go back
Thank
to
you, Beatrice. Okay, Glenn. Glenn. Well, maybe Glenn's making pralines. Greer. Everybody's here, right? Okay, well, I don't know where Glenn and Greer went
Wake
to.
up, Glenn. He might have dozed off. Or is he in the car?
I don't know. Greer?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay.
Okay, I love the article, really, I did. I just have this to say, until we are all safe and valued, then none of us are. And this world is never going to be what it could be until that happens. That's it.
That's true. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I just want to say, in researching for this article, I came across another article, and the reason I didn't use that one because it was about the Canadian school system and how the Muslim students felt that they weren't represented in like in history and current events and different things in the school system. And I'm sure the same thing happens here. The only reason I didn't bring it is because it was about the Canadian school system, but they brought up a lot of good points about how Muslims are not represented in our everyday culture. Like, you don't see, well, probably McDonald's commercials or Walmart commercials. I use Walmart. Walmart commercials that feature Muslims, things like that. That they're not featured prominently or even addressed in our media, not in a positive light. I mean, I'm trying to think of one, but if anybody can, please, speak up, but I can't think of anything right now. But anyway, thank you all for attending. Are there any announcements, Phyllis?